Welcome everyone. My name is Jocelyn and this is Quantum Talk. I am the Quantum Queen. I wanted to talk about my whole process. I do quite a combination of things. I'm gonna kind of break down my whole process of what a thought is and the vibration of it. I have this huge passion for combining spirituality and science. At the basis of everything, we all know that quantum physics, it like trumps all. Our observation is what affects quantum entities. It's what affects them to be able to act like a particle or a wave. It's always important to understand that basis. The foundation of quantum physics is the be-all, tell-all of everything, but I still think it's really important to understand other things like biology and chemistry, because that is currently how our reality is set up. So you have to have a really good understanding of both so that you can maneuver through our reality, but also figure out how you can get to the quantum physical side, the whole law of attraction side, and working through your reality, you know, really changing your reality based off of your thoughts. Freaking, that thing keeps beeping and I have no idea how to turn it off. It is driving me insane. It's just this constant little beep. This is what I'm gonna describe to you guys, okay? So we're gonna go over the little bit of basics of quantum physics. So we know of entanglement. Entanglement is when, for example, you bring two electrons together. When they have come into relationship with each other and they become aware of each other's existence, they will stay aware of each other and even affect each other's behavior no matter the distance that's between them. So if you had those two electrons and you shot one out at the moon, they still will affect each other's behavior. If you were to spin the one on Earth in a clockwise direction, then the one on the moon will automatically spin in a counterclockwise direction. We know of the double slit experiment. We know that the observation of an observer can affect an electron to be able to act like a particle or a wave. It's all based off of our organism. Our organism is already particle based. When you combine entanglement with the double slit experiment, our particle based body and organism is going to affect an electron, which has a pure energy state, to act like a particle. It only has the ability to do one thing. It doesn't have the ability of a wave where it has all these infinite possibilities. So a thought is literally a combination of vibrations, and I'm going to explain that using biology. You have thoughts, you are not your thoughts. You have emotions, you are not your emotions. The most important thing to understand is that literally every thought form and every emotion behind it is just like a chemical reaction that's been programmed into us from our parents. It's vibrations that have been passed on from generation to generation. I'm saying that not in any way for you to feel ashamed of emotions. When you can start dissociating from your emotions and understanding that they're not you, it really helps you through painful situations. And it helps you to start changing your reality. I think that's the most important thing. So limiting thought patterns and beliefs that we have that our parents passed down to us, and no fault of their own, because they're just doing what they were taught from their parents, and so on and so forth. When you have a thought, even the thought that was passed down to you has the chemicals that are behind it. The way we as humans have put together even words, there are emotions and chemicals and vibrations behind those words that we have formed and we speak out. There's a vibration to them. It's a chemical that is being projected from our body. So when you think a thought, it will produce a brain chemical that is like an emotion. The hypothalamus will put together amino acids. Those are all molecules. They're molecular structures with a very specific vibration behind them. So when those amino acids come together to create a specific brain chemical, then that brain chemical gets released into the cells of your body, and very specific cells. It only goes to very specific ones. Our brain chemicals are what our ego is. It's like a separate aspect of who we really are, because down at the core, we are 7 times 10 to the 27th atoms which is pure like light and energy and vibration. Your brain chemicals, which are made up of amino acids, they go down to the cells in your body, and you have about 37.2 trillion cells in your bodies. On the outside of your cells are what are called receptors. And these receptors have a very specific energy to them. The receptors will only take on very specific brain chemicals into them. Let's say you're thinking an excess amount of thoughts that produce the brain chemical cortisol, which is stress. When that stress chemical docks onto the cell, onto the receptor that's only specifically for cortisol, it's kind of like this lock and key combination. They vibrate together. So your receptor will only take on that brain chemical of cortisol. And when you're thinking an excess amount of that negative thought that produces cortisol, then your cell will actually start producing even more receptors that will take on that chemical, because your cell is like, oh my gosh, like there's all this cortisol coming into the cell, so we need to let it come in. It starts popping up all these other cortisol receptors to take in that incoming brain chemical that you keep producing with your thoughts. And this is kind of the cycle that we go through as humans. We get these thoughts and we entangle with these thought processes and these brain chemicals that are in our reality from our parents and our siblings and our relationships and society. So we're entangling with all of those brain chemical releases. This is how your cells become addicted to that chemical. Because if your cell has tons of receptors that only take on the cortisol type of brain chemical and energy, then your cells will literally be vibrating at that energy. This is where I'm going to also introduce quantum tunneling. Quantum tunneling is where a small quantum entity can actually tunnel its way through a barrier. It can push its way through any barrier when it shouldn't normally be able to. So for example, I always bring this up. I'm a huge X-Men nerd, and I always relate it to Kitty, who can walk through walls. We can't do that as humans, but down at the quantum level, it happens all the time. Now, it only happens with really small things like a photon or a proton. It has to be small because obviously as a molecule turns into cells and it turns into an organism, it's not able to do that. This also happens on a constant basis with the sun breaking the barriers of the atmosphere. The photons of light that are coming off from the sun, they are quantum tunneling through the atmosphere. It's the same exact concept when it comes to us as human beings. Your photons that are coming from the brain chemical releases that you have based around your thoughts, they have photons of light that get absorbed into the electrons in our body and everything. Whatever those photons, whatever that energy is vibrating at, it's going to be even quantum tunneling out of your human being and into your environment. So this is why, spiritual people talk about our environment and the people that we hang around with, that there's this energy and it affects us. Yes, chemically, quantum physically, scientifically, that is what happens. You have photons of light from your even brain chemicals that are quantum tunneling from your being, and we entangle with those, we interact with those in our environment. So your environment is key. Where you're living, the people that you're surrounded by, all of that is so important to your own well-being. The vibration of the chemicals that we think will literally holographically project the reality around us. So this is why you get what you attract. The whole law of attraction thing is absolutely positively real. So the more receptors that your cells have based around cortisol and stress, then you will keep attracting those type of situations and relationships that vibrate at that same exact level. And that's how you can also start to be more aware of your internal being and just understand the reality in front of you. It's just a reflection of your internal state, what's going on in the cells in your body and your thought processes. This is how we become aware of our thoughts. and what's going on, because it's so hard to notice. They're so programmed into our subconscious mind. We're so used to thinking them that we don't even know that we're thinking them. Self-awareness, and what spiritual people like to call the third eye awakening. That's what it is. It's having a self-awareness of how much you really do create the reality around you, that you're not a victim to your reality. So you have to think about, if your cells are vibrating at this cortisol type of vibration, energy, chemical, the amino acids from those brain chemicals, they will enter into the cell. They combine with the messenger RNA that comes from the DNA. The DNA is the blueprint that tells the body how to arrange all of the amino acids to create even more cells in the body. Those amino acids from your brain chemicals will enter into the cell. They combine with the ribosome and with the messenger RNA, and then they get constructed into specific proteins, and then this is how the rest of the cells in your body get created. If you're thinking those excess amount of cortisol thoughts, then that's literally the cells that are even being more created inside of your being. That's how our whole body, our whole being is particle based. It's off of this low vibrational energy of cortisol and stress. And cortisol and stress are completely linked to chronic diseases, because it's a low vibrational state that will cause illnesses and diseases. It's that kind of acidic environment that will cause all of those diseases to happen. When people speak, they're literally speaking from the vibration of the cells in their being. So this is how you can really pay attention to people's language and understand where they're vibrating at. If they're vibrating at like shame and guilt and fear, you can completely hear it in their speech. It's a complete projection from the energy of the cells in their body, because the cells are creating even more cells, like even to the vocal cords. It's all based off of those amino acids, not only from the brain chemicals, but foods that we eat, because we get 9 essential amino acids from the foods that we eat. So all of that is vibrational. All of it is going to combine to really show where you are vibrating at. With language, even the thoughts that we think, it's just this like really crazy cycle to look at. Any thought that you pick up from your parents, you're entangling with their thought processes and the brain chemical releases behind them. Whether you know it or not, they don't even always have to speak it when we're children. But even their speech, we're entangling with that as well, and then producing those brain chemicals when we're younger. Scientifically, that's how we pick up on all these thought patterns and the brain chemical releases behind them, because we're releasing those. When people say that a thought that you think, it gains momentum, that's why you have to stop it when it first happens, like a negative thought. When you start to think it, that first of all is the pattern that was passed down to you from your parent, okay? That's the belief. When you think it, you have to be aware and try to pivot, change the direction of where it's headed, because once it gains momentum, that just means that your hypothalamus is going to start creating those brain chemicals constantly, and feeding your cells, because your cells are addicted to that. So the only real way to change the pattern of the thought is to become aware that it's negative, and then you have to start soothing yourself. You have to start utilizing the chemical releases in your brain that are associated with pain relief, like cannabinoids and opioids. Your brain already produces those brain chemicals. So once you start to think thoughts like making peace with your situations, or, just really like going easy on yourself, having compassion on not only yourself, but other people, then you actually start to utilize those brain chemicals that are associated with pain relief. And that right there is going to have a completely different chemical response behind it, a different vibration. This is how you raise the vibrational state of the cells in your being and start even changing the receptors. It's a process for sure, and that's why I'm huge on working out and sweating and cleansing and vibrations. You have to start cleansing out the receptors that are just associated with stress and cortisol. It's like this process you have to go through of changing your thoughts to being positive, eating higher vibrational foods, going out and getting the photons of light from the sun, getting outside, also like freaking sweating it out. Every single day you change as a vibrational being. It's really what karma is. Whatever is going on, the vibration of the cells in your being, that's exactly what you're going to experience in your realities. Everyone thinks karma is this crazy bitch that's running around and like punishing everyone, like you're good, you're bad. No, it's just literally the energy of the thought processes and the brain chemicals that were passed down to you from your parents, and they accumulate. You might think that you're living a different life than them, and maybe your situations are even more intense or painful. And that's happening because with each generation and the brain chemicals that are accumulating in the cells of our body and the thought processes, it's creating even more painful situations and more intense things happening holographically that we project, which is also the good thing because pain is our biggest motivator. It's our biggest wake-up call to understand how much we are creating our reality with our thoughts and our brain chemical releases. That's what's stored in the cells of our body. When you go through a negative experience, then you figure out what you don't want and you start visualizing what you do want. And right there, the visualization of what you do want is actually a creation. You just created the reality just with your thought. Now, the tricky part is that you have to line up the vibration of your thought, the brain chemical releases behind it, to line up with that new reality that your thought just created. So this is why contrast and negative experiences are really a good thing. That's just a pattern that was, again, passed down to you from your parents. But once you go through it and you see, okay, this is painful, I don't like this, now what do I want? You start visualizing what you do want, and the only trick literally is you just have to line up your brain chemicals with that new reality that you created in your thought processes. So once you start getting excited, instead of feeling really negative about what you just went through, maybe a hard relationship, a heartbreak, or disappointment at a job, if you can actually turn it into a positive and say, oh my gosh, like I just figured out what I don't want and now I just created something new, it'll be quicker. You'll be able to take the bounce easier and faster to be able to get into what you truly want because your brain already created this new reality. You just have to line up with it with your brain chemicals. Yeah, totes. But yeah, back to LSD, for sure. I do think that it causes awakenings, but in a different way that people expect. I think that it causes, it can, like I was saying before, it shows you this whole different reality. A completely different reality. Not something that we as humans are really used to. So once you start to see from a chemical that was put into your body that you actually have all these infinite abilities as a creator, then you just created that reality for yourself. That's why I do believe in LSD, but especially Steve Jobs. This is the thing I think is really fascinating about Steve Jobs is he actually used LSD quite a bit for his creativity. He used it for his creations because once you see that your mind has all these infinite possibilities, then once your thought has created it, it's a reality. And then you just have to control your brain chemical releases and the vibration of them will completely line you up with that reality to create whatever you want. We change every single day, and each and every single day we have new experiences coming in holographically to show us what's going on inside of us. and we have to be aware of that reality, see that we're creating it, cleanse it, like get it out of our being, change the thought processes. This is literally the process on a day-to-day basis. Every single day, it's a constant process of us becoming in alignment with ourselves and seeing our programming from when we grew up, like looking at the thought processes, and because it's a constant learning. Constant. Sometimes it sucks, but you might as well make peace with it, because if you sit there and battle it, then you have to think about those brain chemical releases, right? This is kind of the hard part about being an empath, and I'm sure everyone has questions about this. So with an empath, this is what I talked about in one of my videos. An empath is created in the first place because they grew up in a narcissistic type of environment. Like straight up. I know that's a very bold claim to make, but I know it now. Like I've seen it enough that I've seen the pattern that this is what empaths go through, is that they will tend to have a parent that has taught them with their observation to only care about their needs. Yes, entanglement. They have taught their child, this empath, to entangle and only care about the needs and feelings and expectations of the narcissistic parent. You have to understand, like, when that empath, and empaths come into this life only caring about other people and not themselves, okay? Because they've been taught that by their narcissistic parent. With narcissism, this is why I bring it up constantly. I never talk about narcissism in a negative way. That's the thing you have to understand. It's a good learning process, but narcissists completely operate from the low vibrational emotions of shame, guilt, and fear. So you have to understand, when you as an empath just entangling with your narcissistic parents' brain chemicals of shame, guilt, and fear constantly, and you're not in touch with yourself, you're not controlling your own brain chemical releases, this is why an empath is going to feel so much more. They're much more sensitive to their outside environment because all they are focused on, because of the way they were raised, is caring about other people and other people's needs. All you're entangling with is other people's shame, guilt, and fear. That's already what your cells are vibrating at because of the way you were raised, watching a narcissistic parent. So you constantly were entangling with their shame, guilt, and fear and the brain chemicals that are associated with those emotions. Your cells can have literally thousands to millions to billions of receptors on the outside of them. So let's say that 3/4 of your cell is full of like 1 million cortisol receptors, or ones that are associated with shame, guilt, and fear. That is exactly what you're vibrating at. So this is why my biggest message to empaths, what you think you're picking up from other people, it's just a reflection of what is going on in the cells of your body. You cannot pick up on anything that you're not already vibrating at. That's how those people come into your reality in the first place. That's your karma. And it's not anything that you did, anything bad. Nobody, not one person. Nobody's doing anything bad. Everyone is just literally reacting from the thoughts, beliefs, and brain chemical releases associated with them that were passed down to us from our parents. So if your parents taught you all of those brain chemical releases and your cells are addicted to them, then that's the energy that is quantum tunneling from your being, from the cells of your body. And then your subconscious, your thoughts are holographically creating the reality around you and all of the relationships around you. So these people are coming into your experience to show you what your cells are vibrating at. They're not doing anything to you or anything like that. They're literally just showing you what your cells are vibrating at. So that's why I totally understand this. For me, like, I'm very introverted, and it's very natural for an empath to want to disconnect and just like get the hell away from people because it's very overwhelming. But the only real solution, it's not to hermit yourself. That doesn't do anything, I'll tell you that for sure, because you'll stay at the same vibrational state if you're not doing the work. Changing the receptors in the cells in your body by doing a huge combination of things. Like I said, I'll say it again because this process is so real. It's by changing your thoughts, okay, utilizing your pain relief brain chemicals, and sweating and working out on a day-to-day basis, like really accomplishing self-mastery, going out in your environment, actually looking at the sun. I'm a huge believer in sun gazing because of the photons of light. It will naturally start to raise the vibration of the cells in your body, okay, and the foods that you eat. So it's literally that combination. People talk about that in a way like, oh, you know, you need to lose weight and you need to do all this. It has nothing to do with weight or image, none of that. It's, to me, those are so key, because if you want to be happy and start changing the reality around you, then it's important to understand the spiritual and the scientific kind of like process that we go through as human beings. I hope you guys were like resonating with this stuff and you liked it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. I'll post another update to let you know when I'm going on. I'll see you next time.